Hello friends, welcome to the class. So today we will continue from where we had left behind. So in the last lecture we had talked about the importance of the function of the purchasing department or the purchasing function goals, right. So where we understood how purchasing plays a very vital role in the success of a B2B firm. Now that could be through an uninterrupted supply of materials, could be through a low price or a improved profitability of the firm, or even creating a new competitive position in the market. So all these are very important goals that the purchasing department has to look into. And besides this, we also talked about the a model which is called as popularly the Kraljics model, right, and where we try to understand how a company or a firm can divide its requirements of materials into 4 different parts. So leverage items, strategic items, bottleneck items, and not so critical items. And we also looked at more holistically into that, how what time horizon, how it is differing according to time horizon, according to the key performance criterias, and then the decision making part. So all these things we discussed in the last class. So what I have done is today I will just I will take you across through some more key important issues involved with the purchase of a B2B firm, right. So let us start the lecture. So this is an example which I have brought, which is connected to the Kraljics model, and I wanted to explain you again the same thing. So if you look at this case, this is a case of Tata Motors, right, and what I the heading says materials required at Tata Motors. Now Tata Motors is one of the largest automobile manufacturing companies in India, and globally also it is a large player, and this company has purchased lots of materials and components, right. So some of the principal materials being the steel sheets and plates, alloy wheels, tires, fuel injection systems, batteries, electrical wiring systems, electronic information systems and displays. Then interior systems such as seat, cockpits, doors, plastic finishers and plastic functional parts, glass and consumables, such as paints, oils, thinner, welding consumables, chemicals, adhesives and sealants and fuels, right. So this is only maybe I could get something, this is from the Tata Motors website I have collected. So besides this there could be many more products and raw materials, but this is something which I have largely which are used I have noted down. Now the company also requires besides this like it is mentioned aggregates, axles, engines and gearboxes for its vehicles, sometimes which are manufactured in-house or by its subsidiaries, and then affiliates, joint ventures through operation joint ventures and operations and strategic suppliers. So the company gets these things done from its close ones, so some close suppliers and affiliates and through some joint ventures, right. So now taking this example, what I expect you people to do is try to create the Kraljics model and try to explain the role of each product through the profit impact and the supply risk, and try to place them as a the strategic or a leverage or a bottleneck item or a not so critical item, right. So this is the task which I have brought for you, create a Kraljics model for the products used by Tata Motors, right. Please take your time and do this exercise. This will give you a good clarity about how the Kraljics model can be important. So for this maybe you have to go little deep. You may have to speak to some executive at Tata Motors or some distributor, somebody who has the knowledge of this of these products and how important they are and how supplier risk is prevalent in the market. They will be able to help you out. Okay. So today we will talk about few other things, for example the purchasing cycle. Now a typical purchasing cycle in any organization is how it looks, and this is very important for from a student's point of view or who is going to join an organization, that there are few steps. For example, if you can see there are about 10-12 steps in this model. So where it starts with the starting point that how a purchase happens. Now first a user department issues a purchasing requisition, a purchase requisition, right, which is largely written as PR. Okay. So, the user department issues a purchase requisition, and this requisition goes to the to the inventory department, control department, and there they check, they try to see if the item is in stock or not. For example, you need certain items for your for the manufacturing department requires certain items. So, they will issue a PR, and this PR will go to the purchase department, and here they will check the inventory control department or inventory control team. They will check if the item is in stock or not. Okay. And once the item is, if the item is not in stock, right, if it is not in stock, then automatically they will pass it on to the next phase. So, here the purchasing department investigates the potential sources, the suppliers who can supply this these raw materials to us, and they would then negotiate and finally select a supplier. So, this process is also a very tedious and time consuming process, and then after this is over, then they would place a PO, which is called a purchase order. Okay. Now, once the purchase order is placed, the vendor or the supplier acknowledges the receipt of it, and then a follow up inquiry goes on at this stage. So, the buying department, the purchasing team would continuously go for a routine reminder and a checkup, right. So, to see what is the stage where the product is at the moment, where have they started manufacturing, have they dispatched the product, and if they have dispatched, where is it in the logistic. And once it is done, the material is shipped by the supplier or the vendor, and the receiving department in the buyer's organization, he checks the material against packing slip and the purchase order and issues a receiving report. What he does? Once he checks whether everything is intact or not, and then they will give a receiving report. Then the vendor also sends a invoice to the accounting department. So, the vendor also will send a invoice to the accounting department, and here the purchasing department will compare the receiving report and the purchase order invoice, so that they would see if there is any same material what we have asked for, same, if it is in the same specification or not, same quantity or not. So, everything would be checked. Okay. And finally, the accounting team would from the accounting team, which is here, now verifies that the vendor has met everything rightly, and finally the payment would be done. So, this is how the entire process of a typical purchasing cycle looks like, but it looks very simple to you from outside, but entire organizations, there are entire team of people who are involved for large organizations, because they make huge, there are large number of vendors available with them, and the specifications that they require might be changing with time to time, and the number of orders they might be placing is different, and there are so many logistical partners also involved in the process who are supplying. So, maybe the supplier is not the one who is supplying, so that might be supplied through some other logistical partner. So, all these things makes it a very complicated process. So, there is a regular purchase department who is doing it, right. Now, if you look at the activity, for example, as I said, the user department issues the the PR. So, who does it? Now, the user department. So, user department could be generally the production, finance, marketing, R&D or HR department. Now, then it is the material is checked in the stock book, right. So, who does this part? Now, this is done by the purchase department. So, the purchasing department's function role is to check whether the inventory or the material that the user has asked for, is it available with us or not. Okay. Then the purchasing department does all this negotiation and selection of the suppliers. Okay. The supplier acknowledges the PO. So, whose responsibility? So, the supplier's responsibility, right. Then the next step is follow up. Who does it? The purchasing department. Then the supplier dispatches the material. So, whose responsibility? Anything happens in the way, the logistical partner does not dispatch it in the right time or does not make it available to us in the right time, whatever happens, the responsibility is of the supplier, not of the buying organization. Then on receipt of the material, the material receipt report is made, whose responsibility is that? The stores department. Then the quality control department inspects the material and issues the inspection report. So, whether everything is correct, intact or not. So, quality control department. So, and finally, the purchase department issues a supplier invoice to accounts department. So, again a job of responsibility of the purchase department, and finally the accounts department. So, these are the different people involved in the purchasing. This is how a typical organization looks like, and that is why in a purchasing in any organization, most of the departments are involved, either through by becoming a user, or by being a part of the purchase department or the quality control department, stores, whatever it is. So, the entire department in some way is involved in the purchasing function of an organization. So, this is how a typical purchase requisition form, PR form looks like, and this is a purchase order form, and this is the material received report form. So, this is something for your advantage. You can just pause the video and you can just look at how this, if you have never seen a purchase requisition form or a purchase order form or a receipt order form, report form, then you can please look at it. Now, for example, in a purchase requisition form, what is written? Which department wants it? What is the reason for the need of this product? When is the delivery required? What is the location of the delivery? So, all these item description, quantity, unit price, everything is given. Similarly, the purchase order is placed now. Now, who is placing the order? The contact name, the vendor, who is the vendor, every detail is given out here. So, all these things, if you look at it little with time, if with patience, you will realize it is a simple form made with lot of clarity about who requires it and when he requires, how much he requires, and everything is in clear order. Okay. So, purchase requisition versus purchase order, sometimes people get confused. Now, what is the difference between them? Now, purchase requisition is an internal document and purchase order is an external document. That means, this document goes outside, okay. And this requisition is something which moves from one department to the other within the company, okay. And in terms of information, it purchase requisition PR provides you the description of the requested goods and services, and purchase order gives you a PO number and the order details, how many, where and all. Purpose is the permission to purchase goods or services. Here is the confirmation of an order. So, if a PO is placed, then it is a confirmation of the order, okay. Who can submit it? Any employee within the organization. And but here the purchasing order can only be placed by the purchasing department, nobody else. Who is the receiver of the PR? Now, the receiver of the purchase requisition is the purchasing department. So, since this is the main department who is looking into the purchasing, it is obvious, the name suggests it. And who is responsible, who is the receiver in case of the purchasing order? Now, the vendor, the supplier, okay. So, these are the two documents which are very important in during any purchasing process, and one is largely an internal document, the other is an external document. Now, since I have been saying that purchasing has become a very important function and slowly it has evolved with time, right. If you look at large companies like Toyota, Honda, you talk about any big names which are generally given example in any classroom, right. In India, Tatas, the Birlas. So, how can you make use procurement or purchasing, or sometimes you understand it as sourcing? How can you take advantage of it? So, this is a model which says that the levels of procurement development. Now, procurement can also become a important part of the company's strategic goals, and it can really contribute to the profitability of an organization. Now, procurement has evolved with time. Now, initially procurement or today also some firms are still in that level. So, it can be such that a company or a firm might be still at level 1 or it might be level 2, but the most advanced is level 4, right. Now, what it says, what are these levels saying? The first level is something which says buy for less. In any procurement process, the first level starts with leveraged buy or buy for less. That means, the organization should always, the thought process behind this leveraged buy is that a organization should always buy at the cheapest cost. Now, here the cheapest cost which they mean is actually the quoted price or the listed price, but slowly you evolve through the process, and the second level says a linked buy which says buy for better, right. Now, what is buy for better? We will see, I will explain each of these levels more descriptively. And the third level is saying value buy, that means you consume better, you value buy is like adding more value to the buying process, and here you talk about look into the consumption pattern. And fourth levels talks about the selling, selling better or integrated sell. Now let us look at each one of them, what do they mean. Now for example, the first one leveraged buy. Now what it says, consolidated or supply base optimization. Now the buyer creating a supply base and taking advantage of it. So you have large, for example, there is a very famous company called Lee and Fung, right. Now Lee and Fung is an organization which helps in the supply chain process for many organizations. So it provides information. So this kind of companies are there or who help you in creating a supply chain optimization, right. Now what happens in this leveraged buy is that if you see, utilize your supplier fixed cost more in a advantageously, right, and exploit competitive supply based structure, leverage your buyer's share and enhance negotiation and contracting skills. Basically what happens here is you are trying to extract maximum through negotiation, through your exercising your power, your ability to bargain better. So leverage buy is the first level, right. The second level, if you move from leveraged buy, comes to buy better or linked buy. Now what does it mean? Now this says supplier buyer integration happens, right, and because of the link cost minimization happens. Okay, let us see what it tells about. Now the most important points here are improved coordination. So when you are linked, when the buyer and seller are linked, okay, so they are connected, that means. So there is an improved coordination and forecasting accuracy and predictability. So now as the buyer and seller are linked, so they understand each other's needs better. As a result of it, what happens? The forecasting becomes more accurate and better, and there is no wastage of inventory, there is no unnecessary blockage of capital, and the company gains. Optimized logistical flows. So the logistical arrangements are also more smooth in nature. Okay. So elimination of redundant non-value added activities. So you can remove many of the non-value added activities. And finally, improvement in the supplier cost productivity. So what it basically in this stage what happens? In the first stage there was no linking. In the second stage we are linking these two, the buyer and seller, to a great level, so that one can know each other's requirements and they can help each other. So as a result, it has been seen when companies move from leveraged buy to linked buy, almost they save up to 25% of the cost, almost 25% of the cost. So this is when you move from this level to the second level, it is a great saving for companies. The third level is value buy. Now what does value buy means? Value buy or value management, it talks about increased and early supplier involvement in solution design. So nowadays large corporation and successful corporations, right, they have started this concept of involving the supplier as a partner, and the supplier helps them not only in the design but also product development process. Okay. So as a result what happens, there is a reduction in complexity and the specifications are more simplified in nature, standardization increases and the response time is very less, because it is very fast response, because you can understand each other, buyer and supplier understand each other much better. Okay. So all these things are as performance incentives are given. So all these points help in adding more value to the buyer. Okay. So value buy is to understand how to optimize your buying process, right. So where are you going to, what are your unnecessary activities that you can reduce, how can you take advantage of your suppliers skill and resources, all these things will come here, right. The fourth point is integrated sell or sell better, right. So one was buy for less, the other was buy better, the third was consume better. So that means you are consuming only what you require, you are not wasting unnecessary capital on that. The fourth is sell better. Now integrated sell says integrate multi-company products or services and channel. So, if you look at any B2B firm, for example, any large industrial firm, now they have several products, right, and the products can have the product mix can be different, the channel distribution can be different. So, it may be very complicated. So, in this point the companies try to bring in a synergy in selling the product. Now, they try to design the products in a manner so that they can improve in their logistical performance. Now, what do I mean by this? Now, you might be thinking, let us say if you create products of very different kind of designs or specifications, so it might create a problem in during the logistical process, right. So, some designs might not be compatible, they might not be able to gel with, and they will space unnecessary, there will be unnecessary wastage of space and space. So, in such a situation, for example, one recent phenomena is a modular design. Now, because of modular design, there has been significant logistical improvement for organizations. Organizations have been able to save lot of cost in logistics just because of this design support, right. Here the companies try to introduce creative risk sharing. So, the buyer and supplier they gel hand. So, in the during the forward integration, right. So, which is a part of the vertical integration, the forward integration, they both try to share the risk, and the company tries to exploit the supplier's capabilities to the and potential. So, whatever the supplier's abilities are there, supplier's market knowledge, local market understanding, everything the buyer might take advantage of during its selling its products, okay. And managing the complex channel relationships and even cross utilizing infrastructure and operating resources. So, these kind of advantages the companies can take, and this is generally happens during the evolution of a company during its entire supply chain process, okay. So, this model has been taken from the strategic sourcing, a journal which was published in International Journal of Logistics Management. So, you can check this original model. So, written by Anderson and Cass, very popular model. Now, this can really add value to any organization if one can understand it more deeply and tries to spend a lot of time into that. They can really make lot of advantages, they can create a lot of profit for the company, right, because every stage they can add certain value, okay. Now, since talking about purchasing, then sourcing, we sometimes use different terms, like for example, we used purchasing, we used sourcing. Nowadays, we talk about strategic sourcing. Now, what is the strategic sourcing and is it different? The question is no, it is not different, but yes, in the orientation it is. The way you understand it, that is different, right. But otherwise, if somebody does not understand anything, he would say it is a simple purchasing process. But strategic sourcing is more than purchasing, because it involves a lot of different aspects which help in optimizing the purchasing process or bringing in more benefits to the organization, okay. So, what is the definition? Sourcing in business is the act of searching, comparing and evaluating different goods and suppliers in order to obtain the most suitable resource for the desired purpose, okay. Now, this is the understanding. Now, the definition says strategic sourcing is a procurement process that continuously improves. Now, the word is continuously improves and re-evaluates the purchasing activities. So, otherwise it is purchasing only, but when that purchasing is done with continuous improvement, then we say it is no more a purchasing, but it is kind of a strategic sourcing. So, organizations can strategize because they can find out those bottlenecks or those places where there is a lot of potential, right, for improvement. So, they can identify those and they can bring in changes. Now, look at this example, sourcing at Tata Motors. Now, Tata Motors, Tatas are a classic case in India. So, a very successful organization, very strong brand, having a strong brand, and a company with diverse products, okay. Now, how sourcing is done at Tata Motors? Now, the company has what it does is the company goes for a long term purchase agreements for some of the critical components such as transmissions and engines. So, as they are manufacturers of automobiles, large and cars and even trucks and all. So, they go for purchasing agreements for some of the critical components, and the company has established contracts with some commodity suppliers. For example, some regular products are there. Commodity means some products which are very basic, very general in nature, right. So, they have gone for contracts with some of the commodity suppliers to cover its own as well as the suppliers requirements, and Tatas are very famous for even giving a helping hand to their suppliers and helping in their supplier development process. Okay. So, this is done to mitigate or reduce the effect of the volatility in the commodity prices, right. So, most of this because every organization, as you have seen, if it is a commodity, the supply risk is low, then you would like to take advantage of the prices by buying it at the cheapest cost maybe. The company has also undertaken special initiatives to reduce material consumption through value engineering and value analysis techniques. So, Tata Motors has not only stayed up to that, it has also taken advantage by reducing material consumption by using certain techniques like value engineering and value analysis. In this, what happens? The company tries to go through a reverse mechanism and tries to understand the process of manufacturing of a product. Now, just imagine this is a product being manufactured and there are, let us say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 steps. Okay. Now, a deep interpretation analysis tells that 2 and 3 can be, let us say, merged, right. So, now what has happened? 1, so 2 and 3 together, 4, 5, 6. So, there are now 5 steps. Okay. So, this activity has helped in reducing one step. Now, one step reduction means 16% efficiency has improved, simple. So, this is just an example I have given. Now, just imagine a product like a automobile where you have thousands of components and where you have different jobs in hand, right, processes that are being undertaken. So, if you do a value analysis, maybe you can find out certain different kinds of steps that can be eliminated or replace certain products with some new materials which is more cheaper or effective. So, by doing these kind of activities or this kind of practices, the company can reduce its cost of operation. Okay. So, Tata Motors has been very successful in doing it, and if you look at today, Tata Motors is in a very fast growing company, automobile company in India and even in the world. Okay. So, they have brands like Jaguar and all with them. And what are the steps in strategic sourcing? So, maybe I will wind up this class with this slide. So, steps in strategic sourcing is, for example, it starts with an internal need analysis. So, when a company gets into strategic sourcing, the first step is to look at the internal need. Why do you need it? Why should we even do it? These kind of questions should be asked by the company, right. So, what is my vision statement, my mission statement, what is my goal, what values I am going to impart. So, looking into all, the company does an internal need analysis, and once it does that, then it goes for a market assessment. Now, supplier market assessment. So, they should, because if you want to develop a product, you need to understand you would not be producing all the parts, right, or the services. So, you need help from outside. So, the supplier market assessment has to be done, and then a portfolio analysis is to be done. Like, for example, you need to understand what kind of an item is it. Is it a strategic item? Is it a bottleneck item, leverage item? What is it exactly? Accordingly, you develop a supplier relationship, right? You do a supplier relationship analysis. Now, which kind of suppliers can supply to us? What is their position? What is their relationship, and how can we establish a good relationship with them? The next step in strategic sourcing is to look at risk assessment. Now, when you talk about risk assessment, for example, COVID-19 I have written. Now, you cannot predict a pandemic, but still you can surely assess certain other kinds of risks, for example, political risks, right. some maybe natural calamity is a different issue, but political risk that does not happen in one day, right. So, you can assess let us say the Russia Ukraine war has resulted in different political relationships. Now, India has buying oil from Russia, now the USA might not like it. Similarly, USA might have a different opinion about those countries which are supporting Russia. So, these kind of equations will go on. Now, what kind of an impact that will have on our business is very important, and that we need to understand. Then finally, you go for negotiation and supplier selection and a continuous improvement process. So, these are the 6 steps that is involved in strategic sourcing. Okay. Now, I will finish maybe this is an example of Starbucks. Now, Starbucks, what it does, it is a all of the very famous chain, right. So, you must have gone into Starbucks cafe and you have taken its coffee. So, what Starbucks does for its coffee purchasing strategy? It builds relationship with growers and exporters and checking on agricultural conditions and crop yield and searching out varieties and sources that would meet the Starbucks standard. So, Starbucks is one of the most popular brands in the world, global brand. Now, it has a certain standard. So, it wants that all the raw material that it uses should also meet that quality, otherwise the brand will the image will get affected. Okay. Then they use fixed price purchase commitments and purchasing future contracts, so that if there is any price fluctuation and all, they will not be affected too much. So, they kind of do a future contracts and all, so that they can hedge themselves. Okay. Starbucks contributes to the sustainability of coffee growers also and helps in environmental conservation. Now, that is not directly, one may think, not directly linked to Starbucks, but by this process they create a good relationship with the farmers and those producers. Okay. And obviously, everybody has a responsibility for the environment, which they also understand it. Purchasing and marketing fair trade certified coffee. So, they have a very established mechanism of purchasing a good quality product and certifying their vendors for accordingly. And finally, they promote the coffee cultivation methods that protect biodiversity and maintain a healthy environment. So, basically these are some of the steps that Starbucks uses in its sourcing strategy as a part of the sourcing strategy to improve not only its profitability, but it also indirectly helps its brand building, it helps in saving themselves from against any price fluctuations, any political turmoils, any kind of situation, and finally they add to the environmental health and all. So, this is what Starbucks does, right. So, well, I will wind up this lecture here, because I think it is quite we are through with the day, and I think you are clear with what I have tried to explain today, and we will meet in the next lecture with some more of the things, right. So, till then, all the best, have a nice time. Thank you very much.